really cool place for me and my buddies to hang out. We came out of high school and we always wanted to go there and hang out, watch the hockey game, play some pool, have some beers. And I thought, man, I really like it here. And my one friend was lucky enough to get a job bartending. And so the team was very tight behind the bar. There wasn't really much room there for me to join. So I threw my hat in the ring for Backhouse and got a job in the kitchen. And that's kind of where the journey began.
Yeah, I love that. So who here has worked in a restaurant before? There's usually at least one or two. Okay, yeah, so 4 or 5 people. And this is something we were chatting about yesterday. So often in our industry, it is kind of a stepping stone, or it's an entryway into the workforce or something like that, and that's okay. But I think Mike is a really great example of someone who said, "No, I'm going to make this a thriving career." So I know that's really important to you. I'm wondering if you want to touch on that a little bit about what that means to you to be able to take this thing that you started at as a dishwasher and see it grow and kind of build a life for yourself around that.
Yeah, no, I used to sit at the Christmas dinner table and my parents or my aunt and uncle would be like, "So what are you going to do when you grow up?" And I'm like, "Well, I work at the brew house." And they're like, "Yeah, we know, but like, what are you going to do when you grow up? And like, when are you going to go do this? When are you going to get a real job? When are you going to, go back to school?" And, I thought to myself, like, no, I really like what I do, and I love to entertain people. I love to host people at my home, those kind of things, and seeing people have a meal and really enjoy it, see people have a great time and really enjoy it. I think is really why I do what I do. But I think that over the years I've become to understand that this can be a career for people. It can be something that you get into that is not only an amazingly fun place to work, but you work hard, but it's very rewarding and can be rewarding on a number of levels, from compensation all the way through to just seeing team development and those kind of things. So it was interesting when I'm sitting at the Christmas dinner table maybe 5 years ago, and it's like, "We're so proud of you." Right? "We're so proud of you." And I'm like, "Remember when we talked?" And it was, "What am I going to do when I grow up?" So yeah, it shows, I think we can have a career out of this thing.
I love that. I mean, it's especially incredible and kind of hilarious that it's actually the same business. I mean, I'm sure the corporation structure has changed, things have changed, but same brand, same name as where you're working, and very few people can say they've had a journey like that. So that's incredible. At what point did ideas of entrepreneurship and taking some leadership roles start to occur to you as an option or an interest?
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about that before I came today, like identifying what point in history that it was like, hey, this is going to be, I want to get into business and I want to be a business leader and I want to, develop people and train. And it was, I go back to, every summer I'd push my John Deere tractor around the block and see who could, like, that guy's lawn looks a little long. I'll go up there and see if he needs a cut. And then, winter comes and the shovel, you're carrying the shovel around and, you know, I think back to that as far as sort of starting my own business and getting into business. But really, I think it was when I started with the brew house and I was getting those questions of, what's your plan? And I'm sure you guys are going through that right now of like your families and friends, what are you going to do after this? Like you come out with this great education and what's your plan to do with it? And I think that I was getting those same questions when I started with the brew house. And that's when I said, no, this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, I talked to my business partner, who was the founder. Talked to him at the time. He still doesn't remember this. I do, but I said, "Hey, I want to be an owner." And he's like, "Okay, dish guy, like just go back and wash the dishes, please." And yeah, and it turned out, fast forward a few years, and here we are.
Yeah, you should remind him of that conversation any chance you can, right? That's great. But what, yeah, what were some of the big milestones as you, like, I'm assuming, did you become a co-owner of one location and then you opened another one together? What were some of those key pivotal things that, I won't spoil the number, I'll ask you in a second, but you have quite a few more locations now. What really kickstarted that growth?
Yeah, I think it was, well, from an ownership perspective, it was from one to two. So after we opened our second store, that's when I got into ownership and because I could see the potential and I could see, the numbers and I could see, how we were running things and who was on the team and those kind of things. So it went from, me growing through, I used to empty ashtrays at one point. That was my job. On the weekends, you could have cigarettes and smoking in bars. And so that was a role for me at one point. And then, I got into bartending. I had to volunteer my time to train on Sundays for Sunday football because there was no bar shifts available. So I said, well, I'll come in for free and learn. And then, hopefully somebody will move or, whatever, and we'll kind of open up a spot for me. But it was really when we opened that second one, and that was on the north side. It was an old Boston Pizza, and we have VLTs there, the video lottery terminals, and we had to reno within 30 days, or they were going to potentially take the machines away. So I was tasked with being the general contractor and put in charge of some trades that I probably shouldn't have been, and away to the races. We went morning, noon, and night, and renovated this old BP's into a brew house that's still there and has done very well for us over the years. And then the second we finished the reno and flicked the lights back on, I took over as the general manager there, and that's when we thought, okay, this is going to work, because the regulars came back, the people that had been going to BP's, we attracted people from all over to come check us out over there.
So were you nervous before you opened the doors on number two? Like, was that?
I'm still nervous. We're opening a store here in, I don't know, a month, and I'm like, are people going to show up? Like, is this like, I don't think you ever lose that, where you question whether you pick the right spot, or, is the traffic right? Is the exit right here work for, convenience for people, and where's the parking? And you think all those kind of things before you open a store, and just hold your breath for a week or two. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I've been there. I think one of the really important things to grow a business is you have to understand what made you successful. You have to understand what actually were the reasons that you had that initial success, or you'll never be able to replicate it. You're just kind of, shooting in the dark. So I think what we talked about yesterday too is just when you get that second one open, now you've proven to yourself and to the community that it wasn't just luck the first time, right? So I can see how that sort of fueled some confidence, and then you start moving faster and faster.
I look back at it and I think everybody loves cold beer. No, just kidding. Yeah, cold beer, secret to success. But it's a certain level of persistence. It's a certain level of not taking no as the answer, right? Is when being an entrepreneur and coming up against a challenge and someone says, no, you can't do that. And if you pick up your bag and you go home, you're not likely to have a whole lot of success. It's okay. That I'll take that as a maybe, right? I'll take the no as a maybe, and continuing to try and drive towards getting to your goal. And then you'll know when you get there, because people will go, how did you do that? Right. And if they can't walk through the process themselves, then you're able to persist over what you were being challenged by.
So one of the things, I mean, talking about persistence, just some of the roles of like the hats you were wearing to open that second location. And I can't even imagine, now how many hats you wear in a day to day. Is anyone here already a small business owner? Have any of you started your entrepreneurship journey? Okay, amazing. That's great. If you haven't already experienced this, what you'll probably find is, you quickly become a generalist. You quickly have to learn skills in so many different areas. So for you, thinking about the customer experience in this new restaurant, thinking about food and beverage program, but also being general contractor, dealing with the city on permits and all of this, that must have been overwhelming. How did you handle that, and how do you still handle that sort of organized chaos now?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of the same but different. And so what I mean by that is that when we opened our third store on Ellerslie Road on the south side, it had a basement in it. It was the first time that we were able to build out a location the way we wanted it, right? The first store was an old pool hall. Second store was a BP's. So that you went in there now, you'd be like, I could see how this was a BP's, right? And so this was the first time we got a chance to build it how we wanted, the giant jumbotron, having that stadium-like seating, and we had a basement there. And so we got the third store open, and then it was obvious that we needed more support on a head office level. So not really a legitimate head office, but we were in the basement. So concrete floors. When somebody flushed the toilet, the pipes would rattle over your head. It was like we were in the basement, but we had an office all of a sudden. And so we started to peel back what some of those roles and some of those things that we needed to approach and attack to continue to be successful are. So whether it was HR and training and developing out training material, or marketing and what events we're going to try and book, and we're going to do a dodgeball tourney or horseshoes or whatever it is, and put grass out in the parking lot, and how do we market that, and right down to accounts. And some days I just a big stack invoices on my desk and going through and calling the guy and saying, hey, can you get this down a little bit, and negotiating and working with suppliers on supply chain and procurement, and trying to find the best deal and the best product. So um, that was then, and this now is just a bigger team with a lot of the same challenges. I still find myself, scratching at little parts of the, organization, in that sense of saying, hey, this is what made us successful, so let's not lose sight of it.
Right. Yeah, that's really important. You have to be able to look back as well and say, this is a part of our history. We're not just sentimental. We actually know that that's pivotal to our success, right? And doing that while also being able to innovate and grow and move forward and look forward is really, really critical. So when you balance all of these different tasks and roles, and I think this is a good discussion, not just for student entrepreneurs, but also just students, do you find that some of those things actually are more enjoyable and you gravitate towards them? And, do you ever put off things that you think, oh, I actually need to do more of that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of payroll. I don't. Putting me in front of a computer for 12 hours a day isn't the most productive of time spent. But you know, I, yeah, I think what I've learned over the last couple years, very specifically, is leaning into people's strengths versus trying to work on your challenges or the things that you need to overcome or sharpen up. Right? I don't. I had a call with a lady earlier today out of Toronto that does merchandising, and I'm making shirts and hats and these kind of things. I have no business doing that, right? And because my style is outside of somebody else's, and so working on the uniform program for the company, um, it just landed on my desk because we didn't have anyone else to do it. So I'm trying to reach out to experts and SMEs in those fields to try and leverage them, whether it's just on a consulting basis or actually bring them on into the company to try and fill those gaps that we have challenges in, versus trying to teach somebody something that they might not enjoy.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess as you've grown and your team has grown, store number two, you probably had what, how many people on the team roughly at that time? Whole company.
Whole company, maybe 80-ish.
How many now would you say?
We're well over 3,000.
1,000. So 80 people to 3,000 people. So when you have 80 people, I mean, even then, that's a fairly big team. But you're general contractor. You're finalizing the menu. You're overseeing interior design for the space, and you can have those touch points and you can have all that control over different parts of your business. Now, I'm quite sure even if you wanted to have that kind of control, there's just not enough hours in your day, right? So, how have you handled some of that letting go, or knowing which parts to let go of, which parts to delegate to those, subject matter experts, and which parts are really, really critical that you need to have direct oversight on?
Yeah, I think every book on business is gonna tell you that it's difficult to let go and difficult to delegate, and if you feel that way, that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing that you feel that way, and that knowing that, okay, I have to, but it doesn't feel good right out of the gates, is important. And then letting the team fail and be okay with it. That's something that I've taken away over the last handful of years, is that you making the wrong decision is worse than making no decision. So, you get the indecisiveness, and you get people that go down a road where, okay, I was given this task and I've got a mid urgency decision to make based on this project that Mike's given me. I'm not going to do anything until I talk to him. And then it drags and it drags and it drags, versus just going, I'm just going to go in on this and we'll see what happens. And knowing that Mike's going to come in and go, okay, great, nailed it, or why don't we try this way next time, right? So it is challenging. It's something that I need to work on all the time.
I think we all need to work on that. I mean, that's an ongoing process. But like you said, being able to acknowledge it being able to feel those kind of emotions about letting go, I mean, it means that you care about your business, you care about your people, and you want to do the best you can with that process, right? So that's amazing to hear. Let's talk about handling failure. I actually think that's a great topic for entrepreneurship and especially food industry and probably cannabis industry to talk about right now. I mean, there's a lot of challenges out there. There is a lot of success and growth, but there is also a lot of failure that we're all trying to navigate. So, what's your approach to that? How have you handled that in your career and in your company?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky enough not to have closed any stores, so that's, that's something. I mean, we're up against stores that we do have open that probably shouldn't be, though, where we've made a decision on a market or an area that just isn't really feeling the love of the community. There's not enough people there that are looking for that outing, or it's really saturated. And so instead of a couple people really having quality lineups and sales, you've got everybody splitting the pie kind of thing. Um, but we've made a ton of mistakes over the years. It's a matter of, and I actually think of them fairly fondly, because I think that if you don't, if you're caught up, if you're hung up on your mistakes, you didn't learn from them. So if you're still regretting and resenting your mistakes, you probably didn't pick up on what the lesson was that the mistake was trying to teach us. So that's how I've shifted my mindset to view it, because otherwise you lose sleep, and you need to get a good rest. And so I think that when I think of a mistake, I chuckle more so than I get upset, because I go, wow, that was a bad idea. That didn't work out. Yeah. So that's the way we handle it. And I mean, yeah, we don't have enough time in the day to talk about the amount of mistakes we made, but you've just got to pick up what the lesson was and keep going.
Yeah, and on this subject, I think I ask every panel speaker or anytime I speak to an entrepreneur in a setting like this, I love to ask this. And there's no right answer, but I'd love your perspective. For any of you in business classes, you'll often hear, if you're running a company, you need it to succeed or to fail quickly. You don't want to drag out your failures. The more you let things slowly decline, the more you're losing money, but also the more you're wasting your time on something that could be reinvested into a success. But how do you know? How do you and your team call it as a failure and say, okay, this decision, this campaign, this menu item, whatever it is, it's not working. Let's call it as such and move on. Versus, well, maybe it needs a little more time or a little more effort or resources. And again, this is a very tough question, but I think it's just really interesting to hear people's perspectives on it.
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's the fail fast, right? That's the whole idea of how you save yourself time and money, and just a cold shower, look in the mirror, going, nope, we gotta move on from this. And um, I would say that we look at the team in the field, so our general management and our talk to our servers and bartenders and our kitchen staff, and just foster feedback from them, because you can quickly read between the lines as to, just because I really wanted fajitas on the menu, and because when they come out, they sizzle and they smell really good. And then everyone's like, I want fajitas too. And then you go back to the kitchen guys and they're like, this is the worst menu item we've ever executed, because it smokes out the whole kitchen, and it's hard to prepare and to keep fresh. And the skillets take me an extra 10 minutes to scrub. And then I look at the product mix and I'm like, why aren't we selling any fajitas? It's like, I love them. Right. And so fajitas are no longer on the menu. They're officially 86th. But yeah, you've just got to foster as much feedback as you can quickly and from a lot of stakeholders. So looking around from, just because as a executive group, we've decided that selling bags of chips is a good idea at the bar. Um, it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't. And you just got to look at it quickly. If we're not getting buy-in, and that's another key thing, if the team isn't bought into it, you can tell it's not really going to have legs.
Yeah, and so when has anyone been to one of the Canadian Brewhouse locations? Or yeah, quite a few, right? That's awesome. When you walk into one of those restaurants, you can feel that there's a culture there. There's, your team are bought into the identity of the brand and the experience that you want to provide. So when you're talking about getting feedback, getting honest feedback from 3,000 people across this organization, how have you managed to create that culture where they feel comfortable your GMs feel comfortable coming to you or someone on your team and saying, hey, this isn't working? Because a lot of people in a lot of organizations are very hesitant to stick their head up and give negative feedback.
Yeah, I always it is a challenge, and we look from a couple different angles, and so the benefit is that we've got a lot of the people in senior operational management have come up through the company similar to myself, so there's a connection there amongst a lot of our key team members that they can feel it's a safe place to share. We do what you call a Q13. It's kind of a culture survey that we send it out to everybody, and it just asks 13 questions based on how they're feeling about their job, and it's anonymous feedback. And I find that's where it gives people a platform to air something out. It gives them a platform to praise their leader and within their store, and then it gives our leadership feedback of what they need to work on. So. And then just being out in stores. I love being out in stores. I love being out talking to people, understanding what they're up against, because as you grow your company, information starts to get filtered to you. So, that person that's reporting into you is like, I'm going to share this, but not that, because this might be more of a difficult conversation. So, you really have to have a second, third, fourth level reach into the company to understand what's going on.
Right. That's great advice. And how have you seen over the years that these leaders start to emerge, in the kitchen, on the restaurant floor, in different parts of your company? How has the brew house and your other organizations kind of managed and cultivated that leadership among your people? And how have you, helped bring them up through the ranks? Like, what's that process like? What's that system like? And how has that changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, we've got systems in place or processes around the MIT program, so management and training, where we attract people from the outside within. We take people and we put them on programs, development, personal improvement programs throughout, and foster the technical side of training that way, I think. But there's something that I've always said, and that's you can't train a personality. So there's certain people that just align with your values, and it's typically value based. If you see that the core values are living within them and in their actions more so than anything, not just what they're saying, but what they're doing, then you've got somebody that's likely going to be around for a long time. And then you have the conversation with them. How you feeling? Do you want to move up? Do you want to move cities? Do you want to take on new projects? Do you like the brand? Do you like this other brand? And it really gives us the ability to foster growth and development throughout. And it boils down to a lot of communication, but I'd say that personality, that value set.
So great advice for all of our folks in the room here. I heard from Cecile that a lot of you are kind of interested in not just being an entrepreneur and starting a business, but a deeper meaning of entrepreneurialism, this mindset, this approach to everything you do, being innovative and problem solving within your workplace and emerging as a leader, whether or not that's a title that you have, but it's a way of working and a way of being in that role. So would you have any advice for some of these folks who are, maybe just getting started on their careers and see themselves as leaders, as ambitious people who want to make a difference in their organization?
Yeah, I think that you really got to love what you're doing first of all, and look at yourself and divide between money and work, and go, setting money aside, do I love what I'm doing here? Would I do this for 10 bucks less? And if you enjoy that and you enjoy seeing that project finish, that launch, that door open, whatever that may be, and that gives you fulfillment, I would say that you're on the right track, and that you can't you know you can't buy yourself through core values and your core purpose. And when you figure out what it is, you should get chills. The hair should stand up on the back of your neck when you nail down what you want to do. Is this, like, I just got tingles right there. So I'm like, I getting excited about it, right? We provide a place that people want to be. That's our core purpose, is to be the place people want to be. So that means the office, that means plant life, that means brew house, banquet, all our new brands. Is that when somebody comes into work, they want to be there. When a customer gets there, they want to be there. And I think if you're trying to create that experience or that building or that website, whatever it may be, then you're on the right track.
Love that. So sense of purpose, that's huge. And whenever I talk to entrepreneurs, I sort of ask them like, what's your purpose? What's that one sentence that can tell me why this company exists, why you get out of bed every morning and do this work? Who's seen the Patagonia thing in the news just yesterday, today, right? Talk about an incredible step for a company based on their purpose. So I won't try to get into an explanation of it. Just Google it if you haven't heard of this story. But basically, a multi-billionaire giving up his fortune because he wanted to take a step that was aligned with the purpose of their company and why they still run it. So really incredible. And, it's like that shows up in the hard things more than in the easy things, right? So, I when we talked yesterday, I said, let's make sure we don't just talk about COVID the whole time, because anyone in the restaurant industry has had a pretty incredible roller coaster the last couple of years. But I'm sure there were a lot of really challenging periods. And how have you navigated that? What do you do for yourself as an entrepreneur and as a leader to be able to manage those periods and bring your team through them?
Yeah, it was. It was, I think they'll be referred to as the dark ages for us. I mean, we didn't get into business to sell takeout or, to just do skip the dishes. We got into business to create these places that people, come to, like the old community hall feel, right? Where it's, everybody used to go to community halls to have banquets and get-togethers and those kind of things. And that's where we want to be. We want to be that staple that the neighborhood, the community comes to. And so during COVID, it was gut wrenching. It was, having to lay off 3,000 people. That's a bad day. That's a tough day. And, and send the office home, right? And it happened to be on our pretty much our day of Christmas, St. Patrick's Day. It happened. So, the police show up and it's like, time to go. It's time to go. And so, we reconvened at the office and made the hard decision. We didn't know what the future held. We didn't know how long it was going to be. We didn't know what was going to go on. But what we instantly took from it was that you need to get all your leadership together immediately and have that sort of war room feel of what are we going to do next and communicate, over communicate nonstop, even to the people that were unfortunately laid off, was just keep talking to them, even if there's no news, let them know there's no news. Um, and as we went through the roller coaster of, open again partially to just takeout again to patio service to reduce capacity to the Canadian plexi house, as I called it, because we had so much plexiglass everywhere. It was just like, I have to sit in this cubicle of plexiglass to eat and have my beer. This feels weird. To distancing, to everything that came out of it. I mean, there was learnings in every corner, and it was just there was a lot of gratitude when we were able to open for our staff. There's a lot of gratitude towards our guests that, thank you for coming back, because that was another thing. We don't know if we're going to reopen and people are going, I'm not going out in public, right? So getting back to business felt very good. And we came up with a whole crisis plan. There was all these things that are positives that came out of it from a governance, from a process standpoint for the company to be, if a tornado hits one of our buildings, I think we can handle it now. Like I feel like you can throw anything at us, and we've built a level of resilience that we didn't have before, and so, it takes a lot, but it's gratitude at the end of the day, back to our team, back to the guests.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that very honest answer. So, communication, gratitude, resilience. I mean, anyone who has stuck it out in small business, especially, or the food industry the last few years, has really had to focus on those areas. And the feeling of when we were open, we're doing takeout or whatnot, the feeling of, these people's lives are actually in our hands right now. They're showing up to work because they want to, but also because they have to. And, they are inherently at risk by being in the workplace. And so the thing that I lost a lot of sleep over personally was, if if someone on our team calls me tomorrow morning and says, I have COVID, like we're talking spring 2020, no vaccines yet, none of that. If you get that call, you're just dreading it because A, it means you need a crisis plan to roll out right away for your customer facing business. Remember all those posts on Instagram? We are closing out of an abundance of caution. We're closing for a week to do a deep clean, and all of these things that we all started seeing and repeating. But more importantly for me is the feeling, thinking if I get that call, that means I put them in that situation as their employer, that I'm responsible for them getting sick. And at the same time, we have a business to keep afloat and we want to keep employing these people and keep paying them. So that was really tough. But I found, I totally agree. We got through it through a lot of communication and a lot of gratitude for the people who were showing up, employees and customers, right? Those people who got us through it. So my last question around the food industry would be, where do you think we go from here? Like, what do you see as some of the upcoming trends, changes that have come out of recent years? New technology, new innovative trends. What do you think is coming next in food?
Yeah, and COVID, I think, sped up some of the maybe R&D on a few things that people were working on. The ghost kitchen launch that came out of COVID, where you've got just, and I think it kind of started maybe even a little before in some of the big centers in the U.S., but has made leaps and bounds, and you see it here in Edmonton now as well, as having a commercial kitchen set up in a area that's maybe a little cheaper for rent, and then running multiple brands of delivery out of the same kitchen. And you don't need seating and staff for the front, and you don't have to build this nice place or anything like that. So I think that's going to be part of our lives from now on, but I don't think it's going to take over necessarily. Um, One emergence from the US right now that you're seeing is food halls. And so you some of these older warehouse space kind of areas where you're getting multiple vendors together and just great food offerings and some other residual stuff like some of your markets. But I think that's going to be something. I was in Boston not too long ago, and they had a robot kitchen, and so that was interesting to watch the stir fry being made by these robots. But at the end of the day, there was still people there, and they didn't look very excited because they were just standing there, kind of waiting to pass you the bowl. But it was interesting. So I think that could be something where you see more automation within the industry, whether that's in food prep, the actual execution of cooking. I have a hard time. I'm a little more traditional in the sense. I have a hard time seeing service go away in that sense. It just doesn't feel as warm and organic and that human interaction that you want when you go out to eat. And um, but I think there's a huge push on vegan plant-based products right now. We just launched a beta test with a plant-based menu in a number of locations at Ice District, our new flagship downtown. We'll have a plant-based option. You're seeing way more fish come out on menus, quite a bit more in the tuna world and whatnot. And then some of the different spice profiles than you've ever seen before. So your turmerics and stuff, and your gochujangs and stuff like that, you're coming through and trending up right now. Chicken on the rise, beef on the decline a bit. But yeah, it's people still love chicken wings at the end of the day, so that's good for us, I guess.
All right. So yeah, you heard it here first. Those are your predictions on the next few years in food. But you've entered, I was going to say a relatively new industry, but let's face it, you've entered an industry that's been around for centuries, but has only recently become legal and legitimate. So let's talk a little bit about getting into the cannabis space and what that experience was like. Learning a whole new field.
Yeah, I mean, we're not cannabis people by our threads or anything like that. We're beer and chicken wing guys, as I mentioned, and it came up because Denver had legalized in Colorado, and their industry was booming, kind of thing. And so Canada obviously going through taking it, and everybody trying to put their stamp on it and regulate it. And we're trying to figure out what happened to the beer guys along the way in Colorado. So we went down to Colorado. We met with a guy named Ricardo who covered the legalization from the Denver Herald. And he took us on a tour. And so we toured all these shops down in Denver, and um, seemed like a relatively straightforward business, right? People come in, everybody's in a great mood. They're very chill, and they leave very happy, and that's the interaction, right? And so then we talked to the beer guys down there. So we met with Pete Coors, and he was he was very candid with us about, the impact it had on beer sales within the state. And we came back and we went, I think we should throw our hat in the ring. We know we got great relationships with landlords, developers. We know where our locations are very busy. So knowing that our location there does really well, this might complement that. And so through our relationships with our landlords and just focusing on Alberta, all our stores are just in Alberta. We started to go, and the first store was in Lloydminster. And I remember being out there, and it was 2018, I think November, and we're going to open at 11. And I look outside, and there's like 300 people in line, and I'm like, okay, here we go. All right, let's see what happens. And then within about 3 months, the government shut down all new locations. They put a moratorium on licensing, but we already had stores built out. So now we have this. We're looking at the landlord going, do you really want your rent, or we kick it down the road a little? And the government, it made me realize how much government involvement can really impact your business, because you think, well, I go and I register my business and I start doing business. If I follow all the regulations, we should be fine. But I think through that, we really learned that there's a risk there. There's a risk involved with dealing with a regulated substance, which is again why we thought we get into. We deal with alcohol. We're heavily regulated. Cannabis shouldn't be too much different, but it was. And so as we grew that chain, and the moratorium came off, and then we started to knock them out quick. So we went to from 2018 in November to today, we went to 38 locations. So we almost caught Brewhouse in the growth that we've done there in 20 years. Just a smaller operation, a little easier to handle, retail. And with our mill shop, it's a lot of mill work. So, we're able to open them within 30 days. So if we get a vanilla shell, we take it and it's open as a plant life in 30 days. But yeah, we learned a lot, and the industry has done a couple of these. And right now I feel that it's saturated, and we're just going through that attrition of locations, a lot like when alcohol was privatized. It's the same story, and you're going to read about it the same way, as that, there was too many shops opened, then there's consolidation, then there's attrition, and then you've got a mature industry that'll be around for a long time, I think.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that overview. Yeah, fascinating stuff. So the tally that I wrote down is 42 Canadian Brewhouse locations, 38 plant life cannabis shops, and 2 banquet bars, the Brennan Banquet. So that's incredible. I mean, I think that's a round of applause just for this Edmonton business success story. Great job. Like what I've heard from all my interactions with you is, I think it's so clear you're someone who's open to being a lifelong learner. You've approached new locations, new markets, but also entirely new industries with a willingness to learn, but also just hearing that persistence. So you said to me yesterday, you have to outwork the competition. And I think that's really great advice. I think it's very easy to make excuses for ourselves as entrepreneurs, or to say, well, they're just better, or they're smarter, or they have, newer technology, better funding, whatever. But being willing to outwork is a timeless thing that is clearly a big part of your success story. So that's incredible. One final question I'd love to ask, and then maybe we'll turn it over to folks in the room for some Q&A. Do you have 1 or 2 either books or podcasts or blogs or shows that you really recommend to aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, recently I read The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits, James Clear, and great books, because I think the lessons within them, discipline's a big part. Having a routine, creating healthy habits, those kind of things are a big part of being successful, or at least contributing to success, if you can get there. And it's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, is trying to try and take what you learn from those and apply them. But once you get there, it's rewarding, right? And so I would say that he's got a really cool Thursday update that he sends out to you. Can sign up just for the email, the newsletter, whatever. It's just, I look for more of the thought thought-provoking tidbits that you can get along the way that just, if you're having a tough day, I just put an app on my phone, motivation app, and it's just pings you with little nuggets to chew on during the day. And sometimes if things are rough, it's worth looking at.
Love that. Great recommendations. I will second those. I've read them both actually in the last couple months too. So let's hear from you. Who has questions for Mike? We'll just kind of do open floor. Oh, yeah. So the question was, just so everyone can hear, it said that no matter what role you have, you're continuously learning and growing. So what are some of those things that you do to ensure that you're always on that process?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. And it's true. It is true. I can say that. The quicker you realize it too, the better things will go. So some things that I do, I do have a mentor. I'm in a mentorship program with EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization of Edmonton, and so meet with him once a month. I've got a coach. I work with a coach to sort of sharpen my skill set. And um, I think reading, obviously, networking was something that I learned is way underrated. So if you asked me like 20 years ago, I'd be like, I'm not one of those guys. I don't like going to events and glad handing and being like, oh, my name's Mike. What's your name? Um, I got to the point where I'm like, no, this is actually really valuable. You meet some great people. And so just getting out to events and introducing yourself, asking people what they do, and even if it doesn't relate to what you do at all, at least you've learned something. So networking tends to be very underrated. Getting out to events, socializing. Um, you know, LinkedIn was something that I never really dug into before, and now you connect with people, and you're like, hey, we do have something in common here. Let's chat. Another thing is travel. I think traveling within the country or outside of the country, you learn a ton from, and you gain some humility typically because you realize how small of a world we live in. So how big it is out there and how small it is here typically.
Great question, and yeah, really appreciate that answer. Who's next? Yeah. You got a pretty loud voice. Everyone hear that okay? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so around regulation in regards to the plant life. Oh, yeah, gotcha. We did, yeah. We engaged everybody we possibly could. Um, Probably one of the first times I've went to something that was a political thing where I'm like, I gotta go show up to this. Like this is our livelihood. This is everyone on our team's livelihoods. We work too hard for this to let the government decide whether we can or cannot exist. So yeah, absolutely. And that's another underrated piece and great question is that, the people that are in office want to hear from you. So, and it's actually easier to get in front of them than you think, by letters and emails and showing up at their office and, pestering them a little bit, being a little persistent on it. It's amazing the conversations you can end up in. Absolutely. Good question. Ask my wife? No. Um, you know what? That's a great question. I get it a fair amount, and I ask it a fair amount too. Um, you need to take care of yourself. That's not a question. That's Your business doesn't exist without you. And so you kind of you sacrifice yourself for your business, and then you burn out and you can't do it anymore. And then your business suffers because of it. So um, I always look at it as, what is work life balance? If I get a phone call on a Sunday and I'm at my kid's soccer game, and there's an issue with work, and I roll my eyes and pick it up and go, why are you calling me? I'm not in the right industry. I'm not in the right job, right? I can get more done in a 2-minute conversation with somebody off hours than anything else, than an email exchange or anything like that. So I always find that work-life balance is, you'll know you're balanced if you can pick up the phone and be excited about what's going on. And it's not an eye roll, or you don't feel burnt out or stressed because of, well, stress always happens. It doesn't matter where in life, but it's really just, if you get that phone call and you want to ignore it, or you want to turn your phone off and turn off the world, I think maybe you got to look at a new career.
Hey, I think you were next.
You just took me back to Vegas there. Yeah, we were just there 2 weeks ago. We took our whole management team to Vegas on a plane 2 weeks ago. There was 100 of us. It was absolute. I did not have any luck in Vegas, but no, I agree with you. There's a certain amount of how things line up, and bad luck being the regulation that comes in that just says, hey, we're not going to give out any more licenses, or we're going to be closing you guys down, or here's a huge increase in labor costs, and it's unavoidable, right? And so um, I think, to answer your question about in increasing our chances of luck, is doing your due diligence, is really just digging in, and ahead of a big decision, if you have the time, is really educating yourself on what's going on. And that might be going into a negotiation that you're not too sure what the other side is going to say or have, is having a couple of cards up your sleeve that you go, okay, well, I can play this and then that. So, for example, if I'm negotiating with a vendor, say it's our fry provider, and they're going, well, we take care of you guys. We've been partners for 20 years, and but I've got to pass along this big price increase to you because there's no potatoes in the world right now, apparently. And I'm like, okay, well, I've already had a conversation with your competition, and then the conversation changes. And so I think that helps increase the luck a little bit, because you don't know really what's going on in their world, in their company. That helps.
Great question. Yeah.
Awesome. So characteristics to go from being an employee to a leader, kind of thing. Yeah. You, you got to realize that there's always somebody out there that's a little stronger, a little faster, maybe even a little keener. And I think once you can have that humility of, I'm actually not here to lead the business to success. I'm here to support the people to their success. So, when I go into people's offices, I'm like, how are you and what do you need? Versus, hey, can you do this for me? And it's a different mindset. It's a different way of looking at things, because you have to give people autonomy to do what they're good at, and get out of their way, frankly, so it's really, and when I was younger, I was in it for me, it was in it for, I'm going to have the best sales today. I'm going to beat that other location, or I'm going to have the fastest ticket times, or, and then you get to the point where you go, I think when we opened the Ellerslie Brewhouse, I had all these servers came over from Earl's, and they were dynamite. Like, they just knew what they were doing, and they're like, just get out of the way. Like, let us let us do this. And I think it was back then when I realized, yeah, you're there as a support for them, versus to coach, to ask questions, ask the right questions. You ask more questions in a day than you give direction. You're in the right spot.
Hey, we got time for one more. Maybe we'll do one from online.
Yeah, I would say own a grocery store. Yeah, which we're opening. It's always food related. People have to eat, right? Like, you got to eat. So that's, I think, what tipped me into the business, was just saying, like, what is something you can't live without? Oh, food. Food's pretty important, right? So, and we are opening a grocery store in South Windermere soon. It's an Italian style grocery store called Tesoro, with partnered with the Italian bakery owners in Mercado. And yeah, so I'm like getting the second half of the dream here right away. But I think that's what I do. And we get people that kick tires and, come and say, what if someone comes and buys your business, the big Caras of the world or whatever. And we're like, well, we'd probably go open a sports bar. So, like that means we're not ready to go anywhere anytime soon. And I think the grocery component and the food component's always been going to be a part of my life.
What a great way to end that off. So, on behalf of Nate and the Maji Center, Mike, thanks so much for being here today. Thank you all for your great questions and being really engaged. And I'm sure both of us are happy to make our contact information available. He's got a lot more interesting stories to share than I do, but by all means. So, yeah, thanks. Let's give Mike a round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Please don't forget, we have Medina Chapman tomorrow, the owner of Simply Supper. On Monday, Stephen Brochu, owner and chef of Milk Crate. Tuesday, Bill Karamusu from Addicting Games and Enthusiast Games. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for coming. If you didn't get lunch on your way in, please grab lunch on your way out.